What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Marshall. And this is Elizabeth, my wide-body 1951 Dodge Coronet on a complete 2003 Ford Crown Victoria chassis. If you haven't watched the previous videos and you're curious about how we got to this point with the car, go back and watch the videos, it'll make a lot more sense. So what we are working on this week is a couple things. One is the rear bumper, which we started working on in the last video, and I got the little filler piece here made because we widened the bumper, so I'll throw the clip in here on kind of how I did that. Alright, so I am working on making the filler piece for the bumper here. So I started by making a template with the proper contour to fit the bumper there. And then I took a piece of steel, and I had a comment in the previous video about using stainless steel, which I could then polish, which was a great idea. Unfortunately, it turns out I didn't have the proper stainless plate for it, so I'm using just mild steel for this. So I matched the contour to that the best I could, and started by kind of pressing, using a press to press it into the shape I wanted, and then used a hammer and kind of hammered it over actually an old wheel bearing in order to get the shape that I wanted. So this fits in just like that. So then it allows us to fully weld it, and then figure out what we want to do for that lower piece. And what I'm working on now is this little floor filler piece that connects the Crown Victoria floor here in the trunk to the outside filler panel that we have made. And I started welding it along here, so we'll weld it along there and against this filler panel here, and it runs up along here to there on each side. So welding this in is what I am working on now. Alright, so I got that tacked in a few spots so it's going to stay in place. So the other thing I need to do here is the drip rail right along here. I'm going to have to recreate the piece that runs all the way around there. So I need to figure out how to do this. This is the old piece that laid flat right in along there, so I'm going to remake that piece, and it had this little lip here that stuck up here, so I have kind of a rough template to go off of, and so I have to remake that. The other thing I want to also do is these holes here that had lights originally, I'm not going to be using these, so we'll cut out some sheet metal pieces and weld these shut and shave those. There's one on each side. that we're going to be using some different tail lights and planning to use some LED ones that have turn signals and everything built into them. So the original wiring on the car was 6 volt, and I could potentially reuse the factory ones and convert them to 12 volt, but I'd like to have something a little bit more modern and something with LED as well. And so that's something else we'll work on. So probably start making some templates here. And the other thing I have to do, I also have to reinforce it here in the center somewhere, because I want to use the, sorry, it's dark, it's gonna be hard to see. I pulled the latch out of the Crown Vic, and so I want to incorporate this piece in the center, figure out how to make that latch. And so obviously I can't just use, thin sheet metal like that. I'll have to either run a metal tube, maybe something like that, all along here to make this nice and strong. Alright, so I cut a 1-inch wide piece of sheet metal and just did some hand forming to kind of get it rough in the spot to follow that contour. But what I have to do, if you can see, with a straight piece of metal, it does not follow the contour of this piece here. Let's see if I can get a better angle. So it curves out in the center and then back in at each end. And so what I have to do with this piece of sheet metal is I'll have to shrink the inside edge of this metal and maybe do some stretching on the outside in order to get it to match that contour. So I have my shrinker and stretcher here. This is not a fancy or an expensive setup. These are just from Harbor Freight. And then I just made this base that clamps in my vise. And this is the stretcher. This is the shrinker. If you're not familiar with what these do, basically you put your piece of sheet metal in here and then use the handle to clamp that down, and the stretcher just simply stretches the metal apart, and the shrinker takes it and shrinks it in and then makes it curve. So if that doesn't make any sense, I'll do a little bit on this and then kind of show you what it does. Alright, so we're going to should have marked where it starts. Alright, so and this takes a while to do too. So we basically just stick the piece of metal in like that, then squeeze hard on the handle, move it down, do it again, and just keep working it like this for a while. All right, I have been plugging away on this. So I got this strip right here all made and just about fully welded in. I still have a little bit of grinding to do here and a couple of really little spots to do a little bit more weld, and then went and ground most of this down smooth. And then I also made another strip that runs all along there, and because the strip that was in there was all rusted out, so got that done. So I still have to remake the little lip here where the weather stripping goes on and runs along there. And so yeah, good progress on that. It's been a bunch of welding and a lot of grinding. But so what I'm working on now is the trunk latch itself. So in the bottom of the trunk here, I put a 6mm riv nut there and right there, and then I'm using one of the existing threaded holes that was already in there to mount that. So set you down here. See it there? Not working very well. Hold on. All right, I don't know how well you can see, but we'll try this.
There.
All right, and that's bolted in place. Now I just have to figure out exactly where to mount the bottom part of the latch here. Obviously it has to be something pretty strong. I don't want this moving all over. So now I'm going to kind of design a mount here. What I come up with. All right, I think I may have figured this out. So I started with this piece of 1.5 inch wide by 3 inch of thick-walled box tubing, and then it'd be a little hard to see it in here, but I cut the corners and then bend them down this way it looks a little better on each side, and then I TIG welded the edges. So what I did, I put the box in at an angle and just tacked the bottom latch here onto that. And so now, and there's still some fine tuning to do. I'll probably put some like rubber bumper stops to keep the trunk, in place, and that way it doesn't rattle. But we can, oh, and if you also notice, a trunk light. So we can close it here. It's latched. So if we go in here and the factory trunk release button right in the center, push that, you can hear it release. And the trunk opens. Sweet. So I was able to use just the factory wiring for this. Factory latch up here, just drilled, like you saw, drilled some new holes for it. So the wiring I have ran kind of long here temporarily. I would like to kind of tuck it in some of these recesses a little better, and then make it look, kind of factory. Super happy with that. Oh, and I did forget to mention the factory little cable here that went out to the lock mechanism. What I think I might do, because it'd be nice to have the outside handle working, and it's a little flat in there, and the factory handle right there is square. So I think what I might do is pull the handle out and modify the end of it so it's a little slot. And then I think I can pop this right into this factory hole, look about the same size, and then we could use the factory handle to open it as well. Now, obviously, we need to have a way to lock it, otherwise we can't, you know, just leave it like this if it's can't have anybody getting in. So I'd have to figure that out, but I think that would be cool. All right, so I think that's actually gonna work. So I basically just did just that. I took the angle grinder and the square shaft, I just ground down on each side and narrowed it a bit, and then took the factory latch and just pushed it up through that hole, and it engages on that flat in there. So now, latches, turn the handle, and it opens. I'm not sure, I might have to do something because this can also turn, so maybe I'll have to put a little stop so it doesn't rotate, but other than that, I am pretty happy with that. So it's kind of funny, you know, stuff like that, like making the factory wiring and the trunk latch and everything work, I think is one of my favorite things about the project, is being able to use the factory parts to make them work like factory, and then figuring out how to adapt them to, you know, the old trunk lid and the stuff like that. And so I'll kind of be doing the same thing hopefully once it comes to like power windows and power locks. I'd like to keep that stuff if possible and integrate, you know, all the factory wiring and maybe even the factory like motors and stuff for the power windows. Who knows? That may be a whole job in itself. I'm sure it will be. So, but yeah, I'm happy with how this trunk lid is turning out and how it's working. We've definitely still got some more work to do back here. Final welding this stuff. I have to, I think I've mentioned before, rebuild the lip that runs along here. That way we have a place for the weather stripping to go on. And I have to do the same thing to this channel here that I did on this side. It's also rusted out here. So that'll still be some more work. I'll probably just do that off camera. So probably for now, that's most of what we'll get done, at least for this video. So as always, thanks guys for watching. I appreciate it. I'll see you in the next video.